question, sir, is China now cooperating with the United States to figure out what happened, and what do you want from them now?
Well, they said they're doing an investigation, that they're doing an investigation. So let's see what happens with their investigation, but we're doing investigations also. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. You've spoken, we heard Dr. Birx a moment ago say that every country has a responsibility to tell the rest of the world what's going on. You've talked repeatedly about how this could have been stopped in the past. I know you don't want to telegraph what you would do, but do you think that there should be some consequences if in the end, China was responsible for all of this?
Well, if they were knowingly responsible, certainly. If it was a mistake is a mistake. But if they were knowingly responsible, yeah, then there should be consequences. You're talking about, potentially lives like nobody's seen since 1917. And, the other thing, had we not done what we did in terms of closing, because there is that concept of let's let it ride. But at some point, I'm going to have to. I don't want to embarrass countries that I like and leaders that I like. But you have to see some of these numbers. In my opinion, so we're talking about maybe 60,000 or so. That's a lot of people. But that's 100,000 was the minimum we thought that we could get to. And we will be lower than that number, anywhere from 100 to 220,000 people. But I really believe it could have been millions of people had we not done what we did. We made a lot of good decisions, but one of those things. Go ahead.
Have you ruled out that this was an unknowing situation? Have you ruled
I haven't
out
ruled out
no
anything. I want to look at the facts as they come in. No, I want to look at the facts, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Sure.
Last week, you claimed that you're in charge of everything. Yet the American people don't understand why you're unwilling to use the awesome powers of your presidency to make American companies manufacture the PPE and also the testing equipment that you need to implement your recommendations.
I know, but who are you with?
I'm with TMN. Recommendations for
TMN. What is
Talk
TMN?
Media News.
What?
My name is Doug Christian with Talk Media News. Yes.
Talk Media News.
Yeah. And
Go ahead. Keep reading your question.
the thing is how to make companies build these testing equipment so that you can do what you want.
Well, we're doing that right
recommended.
now. We're doing it. We're doing it right now with ventilators. We have General Motors. We have General Electric. We have 11 different companies, great companies, building them for us all over the United States. We're starting to make our own gowns, as they call it. We're making some incredible things. And as far as the testing is concerned, most of that now is done in the United States. We're doing it in the United States, our different platforms. And so I just don't think you were listening.
Senators were complaining to Vice President
Which
Pence
senators?
yesterday.
Which senators?
Independent Senator Angus King.
He's not an independent, okay? Angus King is worse than any Democrat. Go ahead.
But he said that he was livid, actually.
Of course he said that, because he's a Democrat, okay? Angus King is not an independent. He uses that term for whatever reason. It's a waste of time.
But he's not a very emotive type
Oh,
of
yes, he
senator.
is. You haven't seen him, okay? You haven't seen him. No. Angus King is a Democrat, and that was totally staged. I heard that, and it was totally staged. Just like you read the question, he read his question. Yeah, please, in the back.
Mr. President, I want to ask you about one of your retweets that you...
Which one?
The one you retweeted from Paul Sperry. Let's see if authorities enforce the social distancing orders for mosque during Ramadan like they did churches during Easter. I'm wondering...
Yeah, no, I would like to see that. And, I just spoke with leaders and people that love mosques. They love mosques. And I'm all in favor of that. But I would say that there could be a difference, and we'll have to see what will happen. Because I've seen a great disparity in this country. I've seen a great disparity. I mean, I've seen a very strong anti-Israel bent in Congress with Democrats. It was unthinkable 7 or 8 or 10 years ago, and now they're into a whole different thing between Omar and AOC. I say AOC plus 3, add them on. You have, I mean, the things that they say about Israel are so bad. And I can't believe it. Now, just a minute. So I would be interested to see that, because they go after Christian churches, but they don't tend to go after mosques. And I don't want them to go after mosques, but I do want to see what their what their bent is. Yes, please, in the back.
Mr. President, that in fact,
Go ahead,
that you're
please.
suggesting that imams wouldn't follow social
No, I
distancing?
think that I just had a call with imams. I just had a call with ministers, rabbis. We had a tremendous call with the faith leaders. No, I don't think that at all. I am somebody that believes in faith, and it matters not what your faith is, but our politicians seem to treat different faiths very differently, and they seem to think, and I don't know what happened with our country, but the Christian faith is treated much differently than it was, and I think it's treated very unfairly. Yes, please, go ahead in the back.
I just want to ask, though, if the
Let's go.
Department of Justice will in fact support.
OAN, please.
Okay.
OAN.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Paycheck Protection Program saved an estimated 15 million jobs. It's run out of money. The Democrats, specifically Nancy Pelosi, have been blocking that funding.
Yeah.
Do you know why Speaker Pelosi is dragging her feet on that?
Well, she thinks it's politics. I don't think it's good politics. Nancy Pelosi's been blocking it. Schumer's been blocking it. And I think they think it's good politics. I don't think it's good politics. I think it's bad politics, but I don't care about the politics. It's so great for our country because we're going to have all of these companies that are, you know, it's a bigger employer. Let's say it's the same, but essentially it's the same power, all of these small businesses added together as the big companies. It's about 50-50. And it's so important. And they will be scattered if we weren't able to do what we're doing. And essentially, we're giving these small businesses that won't make it, they can't because they're closed. We're giving them money to take care of their employees so when we open, they can get back into business. It's been a very popular plan, even with Democrats. I think it basically passed unanimously twice, the first section, which is $350 billion. So we're trying to get 250. Nancy Pelosi is blocking it. She sits in her house in San Francisco, overlooking the ocean, and she doesn't want to come back. She doesn't want to come back. She doesn't want to come back to D.C. She's got to get back and get this thing approved. It's very important. Please, go ahead.
Dr. Birx, if I may, you again praised the American people for doing their bit over the past few weeks. But what goes through your mind when you see photographs of crowded beaches in Florida? Is that a concern for when we start seeing some of these restrictions being lifted?
Well, as I described, we go metro by metro, county by county, and so I'd have to link that with a specific county and look at their case rates. I believe the governor and the public health system that Florida has, they have some of the best county public health individuals I have ever had to deal with. They are amazing because I had to work with them under HIV/AIDS. So if the county health directors believe that that's appropriate for their county, then I'm not going to second judge an individual's approach to this because I can't see into every single county and the low rates. I can just see there's no cases. So I don't know if that's a county with very small cases or not, but I think their county health official would know.
And many of the counties, as you know, are really free of this horrible enemy. So we're opening up. You'll be seeing a lot of this country start to open up fairly quickly. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned the importance of social distancing, but for example, Stephen Moore, someone you appointed to your Open the Country task force, is organizing a protest in Wisconsin, but aren't they in a sense protesting your very own guidelines?
Well, we have a flexibility. I didn't see what Stephen said. I can tell you he's a very good economist. He's been calling shots right.
He said we need to be the Rosa Parks of government injustices.
Well, there is a lot of injustice. When you look at Virginia, where they want to take your guns away, they want to violate your Second Amendment. When you look at, look, I'm getting along very nicely with the governor of Michigan, but she has things, don't buy paint, don't buy roses, she's got all these crazy things. I really believe somebody sitting in their boat in a lake should be okay. They shouldn't arrest people. Some of them are being unreasonable. I really believe that. They're being unreasonable. But I think Virginia is a great case, though, because they're using this. They're trying to take your guns away in Virginia. And if people in Virginia aren't careful, that's what's going to happen to them. So, yeah, I could see where he's coming from. I think it's a strong statement, because hopefully this will be over very soon for all of us. But some have gotten carried away. They have absolutely gotten carried away.
Some of these protesters are protesting your social distancing guidelines?
I don't know. I mean, I notice there are a lot of protests out there. And I just think that some of the governors have gotten carried away. You know, you have a lot of people that don't have to be told to do what they're doing. They've been really doing everything we've asked them. We have a few states where, frankly, I spoke to the governors, and I could have gotten them to do, if I wanted, to do what would have been perhaps politically correct. But they've been doing incredibly anyway. And as one of them said, everybody's doing exactly the same. In fact, our record is better than states where they're under a mandate or, you know, where they've agreed to do certain things. Now, we have some great states out there. We have incredible people in our country. And for the most part, that it's a strong statement, but I understand where he's coming from. And I think one of the greats would be one of the really important places that people really have to start looking at is what's going on in Virginia, because that's a mess with a government, with really a governor that's under siege anyway. Yeah, please. No, with the beautiful head of white hair. Go ahead. I'll tell you if I like his hair in about a minute after he asks the question.
Move over to the Wall Street Journal. On that point, though, does the tweeting about, in the case of Virginia, linking the Second Amendment to some of these issues about lifting some of these restrictions in these states, not potentially pose a concern for the governors and civil unrest and potentially in those cases? And I have a second question, too.
Well, I think just for that question, I think that's an easy one. That's not even politics. We're entitled to a Second Amendment, and he's trying to take the Second Amendment, meaning that state is trying to take the Democrats in that state. The Republicans are fighting it. They're trying to take that Second Amendment right, that Second Amendment right away. To me, that's liberty. That's when I say liberate Virginia, I would say liberate Virginia when that kind of thing happens. And where does it all stop? So I think it's a very good analogy. Go ahead.
Sure. I mean, is this the right time to kind of bring in a Second Amendment issue?
I think when they talk about taking your guns away, and if you notice, at the beginning of this pandemic, there were more guns sold, I think, than at almost any time in history. So it's obviously a big issue. And then you have them working and signing documents trying to take your Second Amendment away, essentially. So I do think it's an appropriate time to bring it up. Go ahead, second.
This past week, after kind of an extraordinary slew of events from adversaries, North Korea, Russia, China, and Iran, all kind of pushing back on U.S. policy or toying with U.S. military forces, what's your message to some of these countries who may be trying to take advantage?
I don't see it. No, I don't see it. We had a very good relationship with Russia. We worked on the oil deal together. I was with by telephone, King of Saudi Arabia and the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We worked out a deal on oil. That was a very important deal to them and to us and to Saudi Arabia. It was in a deadlock. You know it. You covered it very well. Actually, Wall Street Journal covered that very well. I worked with Putin and with the king on that. And President Putin was a total gentleman, and it was very important to get that done. And the king was great. And we actually had to bring in Mexico because Mexico was a lone holdout, and they showed great flexibility. You know the story. No, I think we're doing fine. Yeah, sure. It's North Korea. I see they're testing short-range missiles, and been doing it a long time. I received a nice note from him recently. It was a nice note. I think we're doing fine. Look, if I wasn't elected, you would right now be at war with North Korea. Okay, I'll tell you for your people that don't understand the world and they don't understand how life works. If I wasn't elected, you would right now. Maybe the war would be over. Hopefully with a victory. But if you remember when I first came in, we didn't have ammunition. Not a good way to fight a war. President Obama left us no ammunition, okay? And he left us virtually no medical and ventilators. He left us, the cupboard was dry, right? The cupboard was dry. No, I think right now you'd be at war, essentially, in some form. Be over, it would be raging with North Korea. If I weren't president. And we're doing just fine with North Korea, just fine. Let's see how it all ends up. You know, in the meantime, they said, oh, Trump's given up. And then they said, oh, really, what's he given up? And they said, I don't know. Then they said, he met. Oh, I met. No, I have a good relationship with Kim Jong-un. That's not a bad thing to have a good relationship. Obama wanted a relationship. He wouldn't meet with Obama. Wouldn't meet with him. Okay, I have a good relationship with him. We met at the line. I stepped over the line. The first time anything like that's ever. It's all good. It's good. But when they say, the stupid people, I call them stupid people, or the haters, they say, Trump's given up so much. Really? I've actually increased the sanctions. China's been very good on the border. In fact, right now, the border is stone cold closed between China and North Korea. Our relationship with China was good until they did this. Once we found out about this, once we found out, look, we just made a trade deal where China's going to have to buy $250 billion a year in our product, $50 billion from the farmers, $40 to $50 billion from the farmers. The relationship was good when we were signing that, but then all of a sudden you hear about this. So it's a big difference. You know, the question was asked, would you be angry at China? Well, the answer might very well be a very resounding yes, but it depends. Was it a mistake that got out of control, or was it done deliberately? Okay, there's a big difference between those two. In either event, they should have let us go in. You know, we asked to go in very early, and they didn't want us in. I think they were embarrassed. I think they knew it was something bad, and I think they were embarrassed. But, you know, no, I think we're doing very well. Well, so you said Russia, you said China, you said North Korea. Iran. When I came in, Iran was a terror. We had 82 points of fighting. We had 18 points of major confliction. The first week, I said, tell me about Iran. Sir, we have 18 points of confliction, meaning Yemen, Syria, all Iraq. They're going into Iraq all over the place. They're a much different nation right now. I stopped that horrible deal, and they want to talk, except that Kerry violated the Logan Act. He made the deal, and he doesn't want them to make a deal because I would have made a deal, in my opinion, except that John Kerry, who made the deal originally, which was a stupid deal to make, gave him $150 billion, gave him $1.8 billion in cash, in green. That would be more than this room 10 times with $100 bills. You could fill up this room 10 times with $100 bills, and it's not that small a room. And I say he violated the Logan Act. I think it was a major violation. I think we would have had a deal if it wasn't for John Kerry. But he doesn't want to be, number one, embarrassed. Number two, he said, let's wait till after the election. Maybe Sleepy Joe Biden's going to win. And if Sleepy Joe Biden wins, you'll own the United States. And China will own the United States. China's paid us, you know, from the Wall Street Journal, hundreds of billions of dollars. Is that right? Tariffs. And we gave a lot of that money, a small percentage, but a lot of money to the farmers. And it kept the farmers going great. Right? But hundreds, we're getting tens of billions of dollars in tariffs. And by the way, for those of you that say, oh, we're paying, China devalued their currency in order to pay these. We didn't pay. China paid. They don't like to write that. They also added money into their system. So they paid for that. No, I think you have numerous countries waiting to see whether or not Sleepy Joe wins, because if Sleepy Joe won, they own our country. They will take our country. You know, we had, go back 2 months, we had by far, and China was supposed to catch us. You know better than anybody, Wall Street Journal. For years I've heard, by 2019, China will catch us. There's only one problem. Trump got elected in 2016. That was a big difference. And we were going leaps and bounds above China. And before the problem with the plague, right? China was having the worst year they've had in 67 years. That was before the plague. Now they're getting really hurt, and so is everybody getting hurt. I don't want them to get hurt, but they're all getting hurt. Everybody's getting hurt. It's a horrible thing that's happened. But we had the greatest economy in the world by far. China isn't even close. Go back 2 months. And we're going to keep it that way. But when you mention Iran, Iran is a much different country than it was. When I first came in, Iran was going to take over the entire Middle East. Right now, they just want to survive. They're having protests every week. They're loaded up with the plague, which I don't want. I've offered to help them if they want. If they need ventilators, which they do, I would send them ventilators. We have thousands of excess ventilators coming in. And here, we have a stockpile of ventilators, and we're starting to send them so that hospitals can fill up their stockpile, which they should have. New York had a chance to get 16,000 ventilators, and they chose not to do it, and I understand that. It's a hard decision for a thing that may or may not happen. I fully understand that. I'm not even complaining about that. I'm only saying this. Iran was a terror when I came into office. Right now, they don't want to mess around with us. They don't want to mess around with us. Two things. North Korea, Same sanctions we've always had, except more. We haven't given anything. I think you'll hopefully take that back to the Wall Street Journal because they really don't understand it. They really don't. And with Iran, I mean, that's a different country right now. And they want to make a deal. The only reason they don't, they're being shamed in because the guy that gave them the sweetheart didn't want to met with them many times. He should have never met with them. And in my opinion, he's telling them, don't wait. Maybe Trump will lose, and then you can negotiate with a patsy, with a weak guy, and you'll take over between you and Russia. Nobody's been tougher on Putin. He knows it better than anybody. Nobody's been tougher on Putin than me. Look at the sanctions. Look at what I did with their pipeline going into Europe. Nobody even knew about it. I exposed it. Now everybody talks about it. I think it's a terrible thing for Germany to do. But at the same time, I have a very good relationship with Putin, and I was able to make a deal with Russia and Saudi Arabia and OPEC Plus. They call it OPEC Plus. That's going to save us, Texas, North Dakota, Oklahoma, other states, energy states, going to save us hundreds of thousands of jobs. And in fact, your paper wrote an incredible editorial for a change that Trump made a great deal for our country. That was a nice thing. I was shocked to see it coming out of the Wall Street Journal. Thank you all very much.
Andy, President Trump unrepenting on his row that he's been having with the various governors, and also suggesting that he might want to kind of take it out on China if there's some suggestion that China did all this knowingly.
Yeah, I mean, look, President Trump at the moment is not holding any of his, by now, infamous rallies across the country. I think he's seeing these press conferences as a replacement for that. I mean, that last 15 minutes of back and forth between him and reporters was really him rambling about all sorts of things and not really addressing what's going on with the coronavirus. So he's using this platform, I think, to campaign towards the presidential election in November. It's pretty clear there's no evidence of what happened in China, how this virus, where it came from, what its origins were, what they may or may not be. So he was just riffing at this point, but taking full advantage, I think, of the fact that, the viewing figures for these press conferences have been pretty high. He's even boasted in the past that he's beaten some reality shows on TV here in the United States. But he wasn't very focused on what's going on in this country. Obviously, we're facing this situation now where there is a phased reopening in the country. There are protests going on. We're at a critical juncture. It's clear. He also made it very clear in previous press conferences that it was the governors that have to make these decisions, and yet he's undermining them essentially by tweeting out that various states should be liberated, throwing in as well in Virginia and attacking the Democratic governor there about gun rights, things that aren't really related to what's going on, the crisis that this country is now facing, because some of these states like New York and here in Florida where coronavirus is not expected to peak for another few weeks, this is a really important situation for everybody in this nation, and he's up there really politicizing the whole thing, and we're seeing that come across the country because his tweets talking about various states, Minnesota, Michigan and Virginia, needing to liberate, he was tying that in with gun rights when it was clear what he's saying is those right-wing protesters out on the streets in those states should continue with their protests, and they've spread far beyond those 3 states. They're going on all over the country, including here in Florida. We've had protesters in Orlando. So at one point he's saying, look, the federal government will back up the governors, but this is ultimately your choice. And on the other hand, he's tweeting out support for these people in MAGA hats and carrying AR-15 rifles, saying, yeah, go ahead, make your voices heard, you're being treated roughly. So, as per usual in these press conferences, it was rambling at times, but not really laser focused on the real issue that this entire country is now facing, with more than 37,000 people who've died from COVID-19.
And Andy, he did mention that Texas and Vermont would be allowing certain businesses to reopen on Monday, and that Montana would be lifting restrictions on Friday. Will that add to the pressure to find ways of reopening the economy?
I mean, there is a real pressure, there's no question. 22 million people without jobs. You heard the president talking about the mental and physical effects of those people being out of work and staying in shelter-place orders. It's a delicate balance, there's no question. People want to get the economy started again. People want to get back to their jobs. But remember, under the president's own plan, these states and these counties, because it's county by county, need to see a 14-day decline in COVID-19 coronavirus cases. That's the mandate that the government set out for these governors to make their decisions by. It's supposed to be science-based. But there is no question there is now something of an ideological struggle here between conservatives who say, look, the cure is worse than the disease. We need to get the economy restarted, the biggest economy in the world. But then there are other people saying, look, we have to look at the facts and figures. We have to look at who this is affecting, particularly people with pre-existing conditions, and really do this very, very carefully. Ultimately, those decisions will come from each state's individual governors, and places like Montana, which is sparsely populated, only 1 million people in that entire state, and it's one of the biggest in the country, they may well be able to enter phase 1 today or tomorrow or the next few days ahead. But for places like New York, it's a very, very different picture at the moment.
Andy Gallagher, live in Miami. Thank you very much indeed.